there is a strong sense of loss in Welsh history as waves of invaders have pushed them towards the western fringes. Hi, I'm Justine, the nerdy half of the Breakaway Bravehearts, and today I'm taking you through the history of Wales by visiting 3 small towns, actually 2 small towns and 1 city, that will give you big insight into how Wales became what it is today. And by exploring through the small towns, you get the bonus of these beautiful walkways. The earliest reliably dated human burial discovered in Wales can be dated back to 31,000 BCE. But we're going to skip ahead a few years, to the Iron Ages. We're starting in Graig Fawr, just outside Prestatyn. The Welsh initially saw themselves as Britons, the indigenous people of the whole island. Wales was home to tribes with names I don't know how to pronounce. It's something like Silures, Ordovices, and Motte. I'm sorry. They were small communities with their own leaders living on hilltops such as this. Archaeological evidence points to them being strong warriors with their own local identities, but still with a cultural link. This early period set the stage for a sense of Welshness that would evolve over time. The first real challenge to that developing Welshness came from the sea, from Italy in fact. The Romans were arriving and they had a very different idea about how to run a country. And in this little town of Prestatyn, you'll find hidden away in the back streets, in a little cosy suburb, Roman ruins. The Romans first arrived in Britain in the year 43, and they made their way into what we now call Wales just a couple of decades later. But they didn't get a very warm welcome. The mountainous terrain and the fiercely independent local tribes made Roman control here difficult and often violent. This wasn't a smooth conquest. When the Romans first conquered Britain, starting in 43 AD, they first ruled Wales through governors based in London, but then they soon set up local military leadership in forts across the region. The Romans built massive forts across Wales, like Caerleon near Newport. It had a full amphitheatre and barracks. Here in Prestatyn in the 1st century AD, they built just a mini fort or a fortlet, more just of a watch post. Prestatyn was important because of its coastline. The Romans wanted to protect the sea from attacks from the Irish. And while they were here, they also built roads, of course, because they needed to also keep an eye on the inland tribes, who were still fairly fierce and hard to conquer. This site was once a Roman bathhouse, part of a small fort or a villa housing complex. Roman soldiers would come to chill out and relax and chat with their mates after their patrol along the northern frontier of the empire. This particular bathhouse was built around about 120 AD by Roman soldiers who at the time were stationed in Chester. It has a hot steam room where you would oil and scrape your body, a warm room just for lingering and chatting, and a cold room for lifting weight and maybe some board games. And then finally you would dip yourself in the ice bath to reinvigorate your energy. But while the Romans came, conquered and bathed, they did eventually leave. Their last great ruler was Magnus Maxen, and his departure is still celebrated in Welsh song today. Maxen has gone, despite everyone and everything. We are still here. After the Romans departed, Wales fell into a fragmented leadership. Small kingdoms emerged, run by native elites who could trace their ancestry back to Romanized Britons. These rulers were deeply embedded in local law and oral history. A key part of this period's mythology is the rise of the dragon. You see, Merlin of King Arthur fame had a dream. He dreamt there were 2 dragons fighting, one red, representing the Welsh, and one white, the Saxons. As they fought, the red took power and the white ran away. The story is a vision of hope and return of control of their land, and hence the red dragon remains on the flag. This was also a time of growing difference between the culture of the east and the west of Britain.
In the east there was Anglo-Saxon influence, whereas in the west they still shared their culture, their identity, their oral traditions, and that growing sense of Welshness. There was also a growing sense of Christianity. Take St Asaph, for example. St Asaph is over 7,000 years old. This cathedral has witnessed every era in Welsh history, so we're going to keep popping back to it throughout the video. This site was originally home to a Celtic monastery founded by St Kentigern. When St Kentigern returned to Scotland, the monastery was taken over by Asaph, a boy that had trained here. The monks thought he had been marked by God from a young age. Apparently one story is that there was a fire break out in the monastery, and while all the other monks were panicking, Asaph actually carried the embers in his apron without getting burned and managed to save a lot of sacred books and relics. He also, of course, had many healing powers, and the city took his name. Stories like that of saints and miracles, along with the stories of quiet defiance, helped shape Welsh identity as new powers started to push in from the east. As England began to consolidate under one crown, the Welsh were increasingly pushed towards the margins, both politically and literally. Geography played a huge role in that. The mountainous terrain made it hard to invade, but also hard to unify. The Normans found that out quickly after 1066. This rather insignificant field is actually the basis of a Motte and Bailey Norman castle built in 1157 right here in little old Prestatyn. The Norman lord Robert Banastray was granted all of Prestatyn. I'm not sure the local Welsh agreed with England's King Henry distributing their land this way, because by 1167 the castle had been completely destroyed by the legendary Owain Gylndwr. Owain Gylndwr was one of the most formidable Welsh leaders of the 12th century. He ruled with a mix of military strength and clever diplomacy, setting the stage for future Welsh resistance. While he didn't drive the Normans entirely out of Wales, he did effectively stop them in their tracks, and his reign marked a turning point in Welsh resistance. From above you can just make out some kind of castle-like structure in the ground, but there's pretty much nothing left. We can definitely count this as one for the Welsh. Oh look, you can see my house from here. To be honest, I'm not even 100% sure I'm in the right place. This appears to be some kind of earthworks, but over there is the mound. There's supposed to be a rubbing stone, but I can't find it. There's no explanation as to where the castle actually stood, but we are in the general location. Just where exactly each bit of the castle was, I couldn't tell you right now. Don't know if you can see where I'm pointing, but looks like there's a bit of a stone there that might mark the centre of the castle. But there's also signs saying not to go off the public walkway, so I'm a little reluctant to go over there. The slow advance of the Normans changed the internal politics of Wales dramatically, but the Normans were just the beginning. Their foothold in Wales laid the groundwork for something even more permanent, the full force of English power. And that next chapter comes with stone walls, royal ambition, and a very different kind of domination. There's no denying Wales is beautiful, and with the lush green and the sheep in the background, it kind of reminds me of home. Except for the castle ruins. Dotted everywhere across the countryside are signs of English dominance. These walls have witnessed sieges, treaties, and betrayals. Welcome to Rhuddlan, home of one of King Edward I's castles, built to tighten the grip on the Welsh. Rhuddlan was built in the late 13th century and is one of the first of King Edward's castles, even before the full Iron Ring. It helped solidify his control over Wales even before full conquest. Edward was very serious about controlling Wales. He ordered his engineers to straighten and divert the river so that his ships could go directly into the castle. There's even a secret dock so he could hide his ships in there during a siege. When Rhuddlan was built in 1277, Wales was still ruled by princes, but not for long. Llewellyn the Last ruled most of mid and North Wales, with Edward I trying to convince him to submit. The First Welsh War, 1277, was because Llewellyn refused to pay homage to Edward. After a short campaign, Llewellyn surrendered, and Edward began building this castle to contain and control the remaining lands. There was a fragile peace, but it didn't last long. By 1282, the Welsh princes had risen again. The Second Welsh War was bigger and bloodier, and Llewellyn was killed. His brother Dafydd continued a desperate fight, but he was captured and killed in 1283.
With the death of Llewellyn, Edward declared his own son the Prince of Wales. It was a way of taking a deeply Welsh title and making it English, and that title has since been passed down through the heirs of the British monarchy, right to the present day.
After his conquest, Edward issued the Statute of Rhuddlan from this very castle. The document officially ended the independence of the Welsh principalities and put Wales under English rule. The statute introduced English law and English sheriffs to enforce that law. But the Welsh were never fully content under English rule, and rebellion continued.
Which brings us back around to St Asaphs again.
The cathedral was damaged during the Middle Ages, during English-Welsh conflict, especially during the uprising of Owain Gylndwr.
He launched a full-scale national uprising in 1400. His rebellion quickly spread. It was violent, dramatic, and symbolic. Welsh towns and churches were burned as symbols of English colonial power.
Religion played a significant role in English dominance over Wales. Saints like Augustine spread Christianity throughout the region. The English liked that because it helped civilise the Welsh. By the time the English gained control, Christianity already had a deep hold in Welsh society. The church had a significant influence over social culture, structure, governance. So the English monarchy, as supreme religious rulers in England, used this to justify their control of Wales. Glyndwr sought to create a Welsh church separate from the Church of England. After Glyndwr's rebellion was crushed, the Welsh church was fully absorbed into the Church of England, making sure that any chance of religious autonomy was gone.
If you'd like to learn more about Owain's rebellion, check out our video on Conwy. After the rebellion fizzled out, both sides seemed to quietly agree nobody wanted to go back to that kind of violence. The English crown offered some compensation, and the Welsh gentry largely accepted their place within the system. But back in England, civil war broke out.
There were times when war actually helped to unify English and Welsh, particularly during Tudor times and the War of the Roses.
And though the battles of the War of the Roses were mostly fought over the English throne, they mattered deeply to Wales. Many Welsh families backed the Lancastrians, led by Henry Tudor, a man with a proud Welsh ancestry. When he won and became Henry VII, he adopted the Red Dragon into his royal arms. Many in Wales saw it as their moment, maybe finally a monarch who would remember the nation who helped put him there. So perhaps they hadn't anticipated that his son, Henry VIII, had a more formal integration in mind. The Acts of Union brought Wales legally and administratively into the Kingdom of England. Some still see this as colonisation. Others point out that the Welsh language was not banned, and even the Bible was translated into Welsh, giving the language cultural weight and dignity.
St Asaph is Britain's smallest city. It only has a population of 3,500, but it's allowed to be officially a city because it has a cathedral. It is home to the first full translation of the Bible into Welsh. The translation was hugely important for the survival of the Welsh language.
Translation of the Bible into Welsh helped maintain the language and gave it religious legitimacy. Wales remained linguistically and culturally distinct, even as it was politically assumed into England. The next big dramatic shift for Wales didn't come about until the 18th and 19th centuries. From being rural and marginal, it suddenly became industrial and central to Britain's economic engine. Coal,
Iron and later steel turned Wales into one of the most productive regions of the empire. But this brought migrants, mainly English speakers. As communities became more linguistically mixed, especially in industrial towns, English began to dominate. Education policies encouraged this, and sometimes harshly. The infamous Welsh Not, a punishment for speaking Welsh in school, was part of this trend. Even parents often encouraged English learning because it seemed to be the English that was benefiting the most from the newfound resources. One English family who benefited from the steel industry was the Somers family, including Sir Geoffrey Somers, who gifted back his land at Graig Fawr for the people of Prestatyn to enjoy. We've come full circle to the Prestatyn shoreline that we were overlooking at the beginning of the video. But this is definitely not the end of the story. In fact, the tide might just be turning for Wales. The decline of the Welsh language was not just due to education policies, but also due to migration and social pressures. But resistance to that decline has started to bring out a new Welsh identity, one that is modern, political and language and culture based. That's when Plaid Cymru was formed, originally not as a political party, but as a cultural movement to save the language. But after World War II, Welsh nationalism took on a more political tone. Debates began about autonomy, self-government, and whether Wales should have its own parliament. The Welsh government have a goal to have 1 million speakers by 2050, so that's only roughly around another 150,000 to go. Not bad. But the language does hold an official status in the nation, with equal status to English under Welsh law. I do find it interesting how Welshness still seems to be defined as not English. For example, in a 2022 government poll, 21% considered themselves Welsh not British, 15% said more Welsh than British, and 24% said equally Welsh and British. And there is support for Welsh political independence. The Welsh government continues to advocate for more control over justice and policing. Welsh identity has always been a mix of resistance and adaptation. Through conquest, immigration, industrialisation, they have survived, and the Welsh language is still here. Daryl and I are still here too, and we're going to be spending a lot of time here in this part of the world. Hopefully Daryl will be able to join me back in the videos again soon. I really hope you've enjoyed this tour of Welsh history through small towns and a tiny city. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And we hope that you'll join us next time as we tour more of Wales. Until then, happy travels everyone!